about. All right. The subject of the week and the lesson of the week is on doubt. It's the same after Easter every year. I don't know why this passage is always the Sunday after Easter, but a lot of pastors, they get like a substitute pastor the week after Easter, because this is like the same passage every year. And it is kind of one of those passages that, I mean, you know, over the course of 8 years, it's hard to come up with something new to say. But I have to tell you, this year, there's just so much in this passage and so much going on. So I'm glad to be able to just share this message with you. Doubt can be so powerful. I mean, it's this very powerful resistance tool to keep us from believing something that isn't true. Doubt can be very healthy. I mean, we should doubt things for our own safety. When you're faced with what seems to be an impossible task, doubt can save you from believing something is possible when, of course, it is really very unlikely. Like, let's take, for instance, you're a pastor and you overschedule yourself and you line up too many meetings at once and you think you can make all those times, but actually you can't. I don't know if you know anyone like that, but I do. And it happens a lot. I don't doubt enough. I don't know if you have that same problem. Or there's people who, they jump to conclusions. Are you one of those people that you get a bit of information and you think you have all the information? And you're like, oh, this is it. I know this for sure. And all of a sudden you realize you were very wrong. That kind of happens in our culture today. A lot of times we hear a bit of information from a certain source and we just say, oh, yes, that has to be fact, when actually it might not be. Our world is full of believing in all sorts of statements, events, and ideas that are just not true. And we believe them, hook, line, and sinker. We try and combat this problem, usually with experts. Oh, that's the latest thing, right? We want to look at people who are smarter than us in a particular subject, and we want to believe because, well, the experts say. But what happens when the experts are wrong en masse? Because they're looking at each other and they're saying, what do we believe? What's the thing that's going on here? Or it gets worse. They say to each other, if you want to be on board with us experts, you have to follow these certain guidelines and you have to come up with these conclusions. This is tough to spot. It's tough for us to see what happens when the experts are wrong and a small minority of people are right. Don't think of politics right now. What's going on is that it's very hard to know what is true and what is not true. Let's use some examples that aren't inflaming in today's time, because that's not the point of this sermon. Don't let this distract you. Let's go back a couple of decades. One of the things that I think is very fascinating, a generation or so ago, is there are a significant amount of people that don't think we landed on the moon. They don't. Some people chuckle, but I mean, they'll give you all this, evidence that the shadows and the lighting, and look how the light is off here, and it looks like a studio, and you can't really tell because the quality of the film is not as, clear. And they'll tell you we didn't land on the moon. What about that? Or let's go into the 70s. Oh, this one's a fun one. In the 70s, there were these movies, Close Encounters of the Third Kind and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, there's all of these people who would tell you they were abducted by aliens, right? And they go through this elaborate story about how they've been abducted by aliens and all of this. And you think, yeah, that doesn't sound, I doubt that happened. But it's very hard to know what is true and what is not true. What if it was true? What if they actually were abducted by aliens? How would you know whether it was true or not? Let's look at a more practical example before I lose you. The one that I think is the most controversial, that has the largest amount of people on both sides of this historic issue, not OJ, but I'm not, that would be terrible. I would lose you then for sure. No, the JFK assassination, right? That's the one in history that you have people who are conspiracy theory, people who are not conspiracy theory. Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. No, it was the grassy knoll. Can't you tell it was somebody from the grassy knoll? Or it was a person, not Lee Harvey Oswald, who shot from the back. I mean, you have a large group on both sides. And neither side is kind of sure about their position, right? It's the one time where you have conspiracy theories where they're not, considered wacko conspiracy theories. Actually, the conspiracy theories are in the majority. And it's very, very difficult to know what's true and what's not true. The experts are all over the place. They will give you all sorts of credible evidence that, the magic bullet was really a straight line. Or, it turned in midair. It could not have done that. I mean, you have real solid experts on both sides of the issue. How would you know what actually happened? So in this morning's passage, it's like, thank God he's getting to the passage. In this morning's passage, we have a dilemma. Do you see it? There's a big dilemma. Most Christians look at Thomas and they see him as sort of faithless, right? Oh, Thomas, what a disappointment you are. Thomas, why do you not believe in the risen Lord? Jesus has risen from the dead. We're telling you this. And he responds, I will believe it when I can touch his wounds, and I won't believe it until that happens. That's what he says. I'm not falling for the resurrected Son of God trick. And they're like, oh, Tommy, you are such a party pooper. That's what we're thinking, right? We look at Thomas because we see the disciples on one side. We look at only Thomas on the other side and think, oh man, the odd man out. But think about this. Think about this. Thomas is not in the small minority. The disciples are in the small minority. They're the ones that have this unusual event, this unusual thing that's happened. And Thomas behaves like we would expect most people to react. Thomas's doubt seems reasonable, doesn't it? Thomas's doubt is ordinary or common even. But then Thomas sees the Lord in the room with him. He even looks right at him, and he doesn't believe. Then he touches him. He actually puts his hand in his side and in the wound of Jesus. And Jesus says, while this is happening, Thomas, stop doubting. Believe. That is a very odd scene. Don't you think? It's so weird that he would have to go through all of these steps. I mean, what is he doing in this passage? Think about this. I mean, is he taking some kind of blood sample of Jesus, holding it up and going, well, if I see cells, I don't know. Right? Or what about all right, there's definitely cells, okay? But I want to do a DNA test. If I can just do a DNA test, that will clear this up, right? And it would have been better if before you died we had taken a DNA and we could match them, because I don't want to fall for the doppelganger, imposter Jesus trick. I mean, think about this. Thomas is over-investigating at this moment. This is beyond doubt. We've moved into a different category. I feel like what's going on here is that Thomas is in a stall tactic. I think he's looking at this and he doesn't know how to deal with the evidence. He's a little bit in shock. He even says, "My Lord, my God." He's overwhelmed. He doesn't know what step 2 is. If this is really the risen Lord, as I'm witnessing it here before me, what do I do next? What now? I feel like that this is the response of many people who hear the Easter story, and it's too shocking to engage with. It's not so much that they have a problem with the biology, although they'll tell you that, oh, Jesus couldn't have raised from the dead. That just is, Christians are nuts. It's not so much the biology. It's more about, what if it is true? What do I do with this information? What do I do with this evidence? I think most people who struggle with the resurrection of the dead just don't know what to do about it. Think about it. They go over the checklist. All right, I can believe that God created the world. Check. That makes sense, that everything is here by a creator. He created us. All that's fine. God put the creation in motion. But then God creates this one scenario that it would explain and that also repairs the brokenness that we humans have created. And this solution is so unmistakable and so well documented that it is the major topic of human conversation around the world every single week since the first Easter. That's amazing. The most talked about and most celebrated human event of all time is Easter. To say no to it is not really about doubt or doubt that it happened. It's to say, maybe, I don't like the way God did it. I'm confused about where this is going. I don't trust God. I would have done it a different way. This is too out of the ordinary and too unpredictable. I want something more predictable. I want circumstances that don't require me to trust God. I didn't have to trust God coming into this world. I just arrived. I don't want to have to trust God in the life of the world to come. I feel like that sums it up pretty well. There is a struggle with what to do with the eternal relationship that we have with God. But what if we are approaching it all wrong? What if the answer is so much simpler than we make it out to be? I want to throw something out here at the end. I don't know if it's going to land or stick this landing, but I want it to marinate with you. Today, maybe tomorrow. I want you to just kind of think this through a little bit. What if the resurrection story, God's redemption in Jesus Christ, all of it is showing us that life is a gift. And this gift is a gift from God alone. That life is not a loan that you are in debt to pay back. That it's a free gift given to you by God's grace through his unconditional love for all people. I think that speaks volumes. I think that we don't spend enough time on hearing that gospel, that good news, that God has gifted us this life, that God wants a relationship with us through his word, and through the gathering of his people. And that relationship is not a temporary relationship, but an eternal relationship. That is the message of Easter. I want to be with you always.